Hello everybody, I'm Rachel aka Pencil Butter, and today I'm going to be showing you how to get some really cool special effects with your alcohol markers and colorless blender refill. Okay, so before we get started, some of the things I'm going to be using are obviously our colorless blender refill. You can substitute this for rubbing alcohol, but if you're going to do that, you need to make sure that you get a very high percentage alcohol so you get a nice strong effect. We're also going to be using the little nozzle tip that comes included with your colorless blender refill, a small spray bottle that you can get at some art supply stores and pretty much any drugstore. They usually come in like the travel cosmetics stuff. Going to be using some Q-tips, a sponge, and some tissue paper like you would put in gift bags and stuff, and some paintbrushes. Alright, so I've already got my color all laid out, and you'll notice that it's not very smooth. And that really doesn't matter, because once we start throwing our colorless blender refill on here, it's going to just push this color around, and you're not really going to be able to see what the original colors look like to begin with. Also, if you lay down too much ink, you will get a much weaker effect from the blender. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to show you is this little tip that comes with your blender refill. I'm just going to pop that on there. And I'm just going to drop it straight onto my paper. And you can see the clear ink is just kind of pushing that blue marker ink around. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to use is going to be my little spray bottle here. And if you're going to use this on, say, like a background or whatever you're using it on in your artwork, you really may want to color that section first, or you're going to have to mask off the rest of your drawing, because you can't really control so much where you're spraying. But for now, I'm not going to worry too much about that. Alright, next I'm going to be using a sponge, and sponges are so fun to use because they come in so many different types of sponges. There's so many different textures to them. You can get like sea sponges and like all these like really cool art sponges, or you can just use a plain old household sponge. Doesn't really matter. This is just a piece that I've cut off of a much larger art sponge, and you can just drip it on here straight from the bottle, but I find it's easier to use my spray bottle to dampen my sponge and then just put it down on the paper. Alright, next I have my tissue paper. I've just torn off a small piece just so it's easier to work with, and I'm just going to kind of loosely crumple it. You don't want to crumple it like too much, because you want to have like these big surfaces. And again, I'm just going to take my spray bottle with my blender fluid in there and wet down my paper. Alright, and finally I'm going to be using the Q-tips and the paint brushes. I'm just going to show you guys these in the same little square here, just because we're basically doing the same exact thing with all of them. So I've got some of my refill here in this little jar, and I'm just going to take my Q-tip and dip into it and just kind of dab it. This creates an effect similar to just dropping it out of the bottle, but you have much more control over it. Alright, now I'm going to take this fine paintbrush here and just kind of dab to get some smaller circles than the Q-tip would allow. Alright, now finally I'm going to use this fan brush, and this one is really pretty cool. Make sure I get all that excess liquid off of there. And I'm just going to kind of touch it down. Alright, so there you have it. These are just a few of the techniques that you can use to get some really cool textures and effects with your plain old colorless blender refill or rubbing alcohol. You're definitely not limited to what I've shown you here today. You can use things like paper towels or really textured fabrics, lace, paper doilies, different types of paint brushes. The possibilities are really endless. If you can wet it down with that refill, then you know, you can dab it to your paper and see what you come up with. Alright, so I hope you guys found this helpful. Maybe you'll use some of these techniques or come up with your own and create some awesome textures in your next artwork.